Hello, everyone, and welcome to Schwab Coaching. My name is Cameron May. I'm a senior manager and education coach here at Schwab, and this is Getting Started with Thinkorswim. You know, this morning I was looking at the S&P 500 up there, hovering right near all-time highs, and I thought, I'll bet there are plenty of people out there who have an idea in this very hot stock market environment of the sorts of stocks that they'd really like to find so they could add them to their portfolio, and they just can't seem to track them down. So today we're going to be talking about using the scan capabilities on the Thinkorswim desktop platform. How do we quickly find the tradable stocks that trader is interested in investing in? Should be a really good discussion. I'm really looking forward to it. Before we can get to that, though, let me first of all say hello to everybody that's out there in YouTube land. Great to see all of you. Hello there, Eva and Rusty, Will, and Lawrence, and everybody else joining us. Thanks for being here week after week. We really do appreciate your attendance and your contributions to these discussions. If you're here for the very first time, I want to welcome you as well. And if you're watching on the YouTube archive after the fact, enjoy the presentation, but be aware that you're invited to join us in the live discussion. This is a Monday webcast series. Kicks off at 3 Eastern. We'd love to have you here in the live stream if you'd like to join us. I also want to point out that my very good friend Barb Armstrong is going to be hanging out in chats with us. She's going to be addressing any questions that I can't get to just during the natural flow of the presentation. Pretty much everybody watching knows what a great resource Barb is to have here alongside. So thanks for having my back there, Barb. And Barb and I would also like to issue an invitation to you. If you're not following us on X, please do. It's a great resource to connect with your favorite presenters in between the live streams. You can find Barb there at Barb Armstrong CS. You can find me on X at Cameron May CS. But let's get right into this. The first thing that we always do is to pause to consider the risks associated with trading and investing. These risks are real, so bear in mind these important disclosures. The information here is for general informational purposes only and should not be considered an individualized recommendation or endorsement of any particular security, chart pattern, or investment strategy. Schwab does not recommend the use of technical analysis as a sole means of investment research, and investing involves risks, including the loss of principal. Okay, so with that accomplished, let's set a quick agenda for what we want to talk about today. We're going to spend about 20 minutes acquainting ourselves with the Scan tab on the Thinkorswim desktop software platform. For those that are watching here at the live attendance, I'd suspect most of us are somewhat familiar with this tool, but there are going to be many, many, many more that watch this after the fact. I want to make sure that everybody can follow us. So we're going to be doing sort of an introduction to the Scan capabilities of Thinkorswim so that a trader can feel comfortable in this, really hot stock market environment or in other environments. If they're interested in looking for stocks exhibiting specific characteristics that are appealing to that trader, how do they go out and find those on Thinkorswim? So let's go right to Thinkorswim, go right to the desktop platform. This is just a quick overview of why this was sort of top of mind for me today. You can see the S&P just continues its strong run. It's taken us right up. Yep, today we're trading, about 0.1% off the strongest close we've ever had. We'll see how the trading session finishes out in the next hour. But in a market like this, and obviously in other markets, but particularly in a market like this, with stocks going up and up and up, they can be top of mind. And each trader, each investor has their own particular flavor that they like to bring to the sorts of stocks that they feel are most important or most appropriate for their portfolio. So how do we find those kinds of stocks in a tailored way using the tools on Thinkorswim? So let's go right up here. Eva says you asked me a question on X. Haven't gotten to that one yet. Can you pose it now? Go ahead and pose it. I'll see if it's in keeping with the discussion for today. If it doesn't take us too far off track, if I can work it in there, I'll try to do that. But let's go over to our Scan tab. And Scan, this isn't the term that everyone uses on every platform, but Thinkorswim's Scan feature, it's like running a search or a filter or a screen. It's telling the software that we're looking for stocks that exhibit specific characteristics, and then the software goes out and finds those kinds of stocks. So let's acquaint ourselves with this. There are other scan features that are available on desktop. If we were, for example, looking for options, maybe we'd use the option hacker. But for today, we're going to be looking for stock potential example characteristics. So we're going to make sure that we're on the stock hacker. And the first thing that we might be able to do as we open up the Stock Hacker is we should know that this filter can be applied to all stocks, or it can just be applied to specific corners of the stock marketplace. So, for example, maybe some investors aren't really interested in lower price stocks or very small companies, and they may choose to just scan in, for example, the S&P 500 companies. So there are thousands of stocks out there. Let's do as an example first step. Let's narrow it to just those component companies comprising the S&P 500. So I'm going to choose the S&P. This is just as an example, just to illustrate the sorts of capabilities that the tool has. Now we can also intersect that with something else. So for example, we might choose a specific watch list from our personal watch list and see which of the companies in our current watch lists are also in the S&P 500 that also exhibit the characteristics that we're about to enter here in the scan. I'm not going to do that today. Just be aware that we could intersect with specific other stocks. We could also exclude stocks by broad categories. I'm not going to be doing those, but now we're aware. So within the S&P 500, let's suppose that our hypothetical stock trader, stock investor out there knows the kind of company they're looking for, and they have a general idea of what that company might look like. Well, let's start to define for the scan tool what those company characteristics are. So the first thing I'm going to do, you'll notice here we have 3 stock scan menus. Now, as I open up those menus, these are pretty decent menus, but this is not an exhaustive list of all the characteristics that might be entered into the scan tool. So I'll show you how to expand on that in a moment. Oh, and I do see there's a survey that's been added to the link. Thank you for calling that out, or added to the, a link has been added to the chat. Thanks for calling that out, Eva. Thanks for reposting it there, Barb. So just a quick heads up as we get a little bit deeper into the scan tools. For those that are here in the live audience, if you do me this favor, click on that survey link right now and have it ready so you can fill it out when you give me some honest feedback at the end of the discussion. But just if you've never filled out one of our surveys before, I do want to give you a quick heads up that it's a really short survey, 2 multiple choice questions, a little comments box and a suggestion box. So it could be just as quick as click, and you're done. Submit the survey, or you can fill out the comments and the suggestions. But if you take the time to fill out that survey, I just always like to say, I promise I'll take the time to read through the comments. I sort through that data, and it gives me important feedback about my webcast. It definitely helps in the direction that future webcasts take. So thank you for filling those out. Anyway, but back to our scan capabilities, I am going to select a few here from this default menu. Let's say that our hypothetical investor is looking for not the smaller companies of Wall Street, but maybe the great big companies that are trading out there on the major US exchanges. So let's choose as our first criteria market capitalization, or abbreviated to market cap. And this is searched in millions of dollars. You see the $M. So if you're not familiar with market cap, it literally refers to the size of a company. It takes the price per share, multiplies it by the number of shares, and that gives us basically the size of the company in a dollar valuation. So if we have a $100 stock that has 1 million shares trading, that's a $100 million company market capitalization. So let's set as a minimum here. How about, now remember these are in millions of dollars. If I put in 20,000 here, that's not a $20,000 company. That is a $20,000 million company. In other words, it's $20 billion minimum market capitalization requirement that we're adding here. And then I can go over here and enter a maximum. Now notice as I've entered the minimum, I'm also getting this histogram display, these bars, some of which have a blue field around them, some of which don't. So what this is doing is it's showing me just graphically how many, visually, what percentage of companies out there meet that $20 billion minimum. And those that fall outside of that $20 billion minimum are displayed without that blue field around them. And I can also even just click and drag that blue field. If I think I can narrow this further, let's just increase that minimum, or let's take this back down to around 20 billion. That's close enough, 20 billion, 500 million. I could also set a maximum, either by entering a numerical value here, or by moving this histogram display window back and forth. I'm going to open that all the way up. So we'll just say larger is fine for our hypothetical investor, but at least a $20 billion company. Let's go ahead and make this a little bit more precise there. 20 billion is our minimum. And you can see out of the 500-ish S&P 500 companies, there are 386 that match that $20 billion minimum requirement. So we're starting to whittle away at the potential number of investment candidates here. So let's choose another one. Next up, what about the price per share? But we select from our menu the mark. On Thinkorswim, throughout the platform, you'll see mark displayed from time to time. That refers to the market price of the stock, or with options or whatever. But yeah, just think of that as an abbreviation for the word market, for market price. And let's say that our investor, maybe they don't like the really low priced securities. How about we set a minimum here of $20? And maybe they also have a preference to not go for extremely higher priced securities. How about we look for stocks priced between $20 and $300? Now, these are all example criteria. Just recognize how flexible each of these criteria tools really are, where they can be tailored to whatever that individual trader's preferences might be. So out of the 500 S&P 500 company, there are 393 that are priced between 20 and 300. There are 386 that have a market capitalization above 20 billion. So there's going to be some overlap of those two. It's going to be less than 386 because they're not going to be every single one of these that meet our second criteria. Then Brothers Goofy says, what if I have a scan set up? I want to get out of it to follow. How do I refresh my save scan? I'll show you how we can clear out. So for example, if I wanted to erase everything that I've entered, I could go up here and select reset. I'm not going to do that because I want to keep things the way they are. Amy says mine shows 393, so that's 300. Yep, 393 matches for the $20 to $300 range. All right, our stock. Let's go. Let's add one more stock scan criteria. Let's say that our investor, maybe they have a bit of a fundamental outlook on things as well. Maybe they look for things like PE ratios. So how about we choose PE from our menu here? That's just comparing the current price to the earnings over the last 12 months as a ratio. And for some, they might see that as a gauge of general value. So for example, if a stock has only earned $1 over the last 12 months and it's priced at $100 per share, now we're paying a multiple of 100 times trailing 12-month profits for the current price. And for some, maybe they see that as an indication of that a stock might be overvalued unless it really kicks its earnings into gear. But in any case, let's say maybe our investor likes to see a PE ratio of between 7 and how about 30 on the high end? Could we go higher than that or lower than that? Absolutely. But let's just set those as our two parameters. Now, of the 500 companies of the S500-ish, it's not always 500, but 500-ish companies, there are 272 that have a PE ratio between 7 and 30. So let's run a scan right now. We've only entered 3 criteria. And Amy, there are lots of really good questions. You know, I only have 25 minutes to deliver this discussion, so my apologies. I can't get too far off the topic and like setting up Thinkorswim, that sort of a thing. But I do have a series available on our Trader Talks channel where you can go. Let me just show you this just quickly. Make sure that you're subscribed to our Trader Talks channel because we have our playlists here where one can go and look into specific topics of interest. So for example, if you're just getting started with Thinkorswim, new to Thinkorswim, start here. And that includes going into how to set up your white versus black background, that kind of thing. All right, but back to our platform. If I run a scan now, there's going to be some overlap here. I wonder how many companies, 173 companies actually meet all 3 of our criteria. All right, well, we're whittling things down, but I think we can see that maybe the trader might want to whittle things down further, but I have a problem. I've run out of scan criteria. No, I haven't. I can actually add additional what we call filters. So right now we call these menus generically filters. Well, let's add some more filters. So I'm going to come up here to where it says add filter, and there are a number of different filters that we might choose. Let's say that we want to add another stock filter. Maybe we want to add a fundamental filter, and maybe we want to add a technical, or what we'd call a study filter. That's looking at filters of what's happening on a stock chart. So let's add a study filter here. All right, so as a fourth and potentially final stock filter, about maybe our investors looking for dividends, income potential. Dividends can change, but let's look for what the current yield of these companies might be in the form of dividends. An average S&P component company, if it pays a dividend, it might be 2%, a little bit less than that. Let's say that we're looking for above average dividends. How about at least 3% and stretching up to maybe 6%? Well, there are 111 of the S&P companies paying dividends in that range. And looking at fundamental criteria, if you're not familiar with the term fundamentals, this is really looking at the quote unquote, the health of the company behind the stock. So how is it performing in potentially important metrics, such as what about its profitability? Let's say our investor here is looking for maybe the net profit margin. How about let's choose that net profit margin. As I go through these menus, just make a mental note. Look at all these other things that the trader here might search for. So I'm just acquainting us with the tool. I can't go through and show every single potential possible metric, but take some time after you've viewed the webcast and just go through and look to see which criteria might be more important to you. There we go. But let's say we're looking for net profit margin, making sure that the company is at least generating a net positive income here over the last 12 months. We'll go with the annualized net profit margin. How about we just set that at a minimum of 5%? Let's say maybe the trader's conviction here is that the stronger the profit margin, the better, but at least 5%, at least some profitability. And then finally, we have this study filter that we've added, and a study, a technical study or a technical indicator is a review or a characteristic of how the stock is behaving on a chart. So if you're familiar with technical studies, traders might use studies ranging from, let's say, a moving average to an RSI oscillator to a Bollinger Band indicator. Wiley points out this filter, this set of filters, is only available on the live platform. That's true. So if you're following along on your Thinkorswim Paper Money and you're trying to add, if you were to go up here to add filter, you'd see the word study. But if you select it, it'll say something to the effect of you're not authorized or account's not authorized, something like that. Just means it's not available on Paper Money. Just switch it over to the live platform and you'll find it there. Okay, but let's say that our trader here is using, boy, in my experience, possibly the most popular study, the most commonly used study is very likely a moving average of some kind. So I'm going to go to our popular studies. And let's do a moving average scan. And it looks like we've gotten a little bit hidden here. We can actually just click right where you see my double-headed arrow. If I click and drag that down, that creates a little bit more space if I need it. There we go. So our moving average scan, let's say that our trader is looking for possibly prices strengthening, maybe price remaining above a specified moving average. So let's say we're going to look for closing price values at least, 1% above how about we say a 50 period moving average, simple moving average. All of this is customizable. It could all potentially be tailored to whatever the trader sees as their own preferred approach. We don't have to use moving averages. We could use all sorts of other technical indicators. This is just the one that we're going to use for today's example. So just to recap what we've built here, we built a scan. As I click scan, it looks like we only have 9 companies out there meeting every requirement. We're looking for stocks that are at least $20 billion in size, priced between $20 and $300, with a PE ratio between 7 and 30, yielding at least 3%, not more than 6%, generating a net profit margin of at least 5%, and finally, where the current price of the stock is above a 50-period simple moving average. So maybe a trader thinks that with all of those fundamental characteristics of the company, the price is also in an uptrend, possibly. Only 9 companies meet all of those criteria. Well, that shows you how quickly we might narrow the field using these powerful tools on Thinkorswim. So this has just been an introduction. I do want to show you a couple of other features of this tool. Number one is that once we run the scan, down below, it shows all of the companies meeting those criteria, and it has a number of columns here. Each of those columns can potentially be selected as the most important for that trader. Let's say that this particular trader really puts an emphasis on dividend yield, so they may want to click on that dividend yield heading, and as they do that, it will list the strongest dividends out of the 9 companies that meet all of the criteria first. So that's a functionality that I wanted to be aware of. But also, there may be other things that the trader is really interested in that aren't showing as a default display. So if we click on the little customize tool, the little gear icon, we can customize. These are all of the current columns. And let me see if, here's an example of one way that we might customize. You'll notice there's a column titled last, and there's a column titled ask and bid. Well, maybe our trader doesn't really care if we're seeing the bid and the ask price. They can just remove those. There we go. And click OK, and just keep your eye on these columns. And we could replace them with all sorts of other potential columns here. So maybe they want to see, could be anything. I'll just let you explore that. Anyway, as we click OK, we've just removed the bid and the ask, and we've customized the search results. So finally, and this goes back to the question that was asked earlier, how do I clear all this off if I've cluttered it up? Well, the first thing we might want to do is come up here to the menu at the top right and save this scan query so that we don't have to put in all of these criteria again the next time we want to run this scan. Let's say, these are big stocks, not bib stocks, big stocks with high yields. Whatever the trader wants to call these is totally fine. Just give this a name to name this scan that we're running. And then if we were to hit reset, it's going to clear it all out. And let's say a month later, we want to run this same scan. Well, we could just come back to the scan. We could go back over here and load our personal scan query that we just built. Let's rerun that big stocks with high yield scan, run the scan, and there we go. It's the same 9 companies that it found just a few minutes ago, but a month from now, it might be very different. And even if we wanted to display those in the left column in our watch lists, that actually, a lot of people don't know this, but this shows up as a default watch list that's constantly updated. If we load up our big stocks with high yields, it'll bring it up as a watch list right over here. But guys, we have accomplished what I set out to do today. I hope you enjoyed that presentation, getting acquainted with scan tools and features that are available on Thinkorswim desktop. I'm going to let you go to enjoy Liz Ann Live coming up next. But I also want to make you aware of some changes that are coming up. I think a lot of you are familiar with this. We're making some changes to our lineup, our schedule in 2025. Specifically for me, I'm going to be in 2025 teaching webcast series every day of the week instead of 4 times a week. 2 Eastern, trading covered calls and short puts. That's on Monday. At 12, I'll be teaching getting started with options. And then again, 2 Eastern on Wednesdays, getting started with Thinkorswim. On Thursdays, long verticals and diagonals at 11. And then on Fridays, this is just staying in the same place, advanced charting techniques. So that's just an example of the changes that are coming for 2025. So make sure that you've made a note, schwab.com/coaching/webcasts. Also make sure that you're following Barb and me on X. Doesn't cost anything to follow us on X. You can find Barb there at Barb Armstrong CS. You can find me here at Cameron May CS. There we are. But it's the best place to connect with your favorite presenters in between these live streams. And make sure that you subscribe to our Trader Talks channel. So you're looking for Trader Talks, Schwab Coaching Webcasts. This is the best place to find our previously delivered webcasts organized by series, by topic, so we can just zero in on what's important to us. You can find those under playlists. And of course, you can also join the live stream. So you can just go down below the display window right now, click on that subscribe button. It only takes a second, doesn't cost anything, and you have a great set of additional resources. Okay, two more things. Number one, if you haven't clicked that survey in the chat window yet, now's your final opportunity. Barb has reposted it. Thank you, Barb. But everybody, if you click that survey link that Barb has reposted there, just fill out that survey. It's always appreciated. And I also always appreciate everybody that's already that clicks on the like button on YouTube. I can see 125 people watching the live stream right now. 28 of you have already clicked that like button. That's always appreciated. It feels like a pat on the back to the presenter. It also boosts that presenter's webcast in the YouTube algorithm, gets us out to a wider audience. But everybody, go enjoy the rest of our educational offerings for the rest of the day. I will see you in a future webcast. I'll also look for you on X, but whenever I see you again, until that moment arrives, I want to wish you the very best of luck. Happy trading. Bye-bye.